back to my channel, Ezekiel 336. I was thinking about something. Thank you for tuning in, actually. It's been a while since I've posted up. A lot has changed in the past few months, few weeks, actually. But there was something I wanted to circle back on, and it's the reason and the purpose of why I created this channel in the first place. And it was a prompting. And what I mean by that is a prompting I came across. I was in Ezekiel probably 2 years ago, 2020. Going through it, actually, it's pretty exciting. Not exciting, it's eye opening. Really eye opening if you read it from chapter 1. And I got to chapter 8, which was extremely, what's the word? Disturbing. Disturbing is the word of what happens to the hierarchy or those that are in charge of worship and leadership in the church during that time. And it wasn't known as a church or ecclesia during that time. This is the Old Testament. This is pre-Christ, pre-New Testament. So it's basically everything, the orders that were ordained. I think it's in the book of Leviticus and also in Deuteronomy, where the law was given, the Mosaic law was given from God to Moses. Moses wrote it down. First 5 books that are in the Bible are referred to as the Mosaic law, or they're also known as the Pentateuch. Actually, not the Pentateuch. That's when you add, no, the half Torah, when you add the prophets and the Psalms. It's the Torah. So the first 5 books in the Bible were written by Moses, according to antiquity. Now, you can either believe that or not. I believe it. There's other translations that have been around longer than the King James Version Bible that most of us have grown up on with. So that was put together in 1611. So during the 1611 time of the book of the Bible being translated from Latin and Greek into English, the time period was 1611 years after the fact, after the crucifixion. Let me start all over. The reason I started this channel was to warn people about some things that I have studied over the past pretty much almost my whole life. A lot of that is theology, manuscripts of ancient antiquity, and not getting confused. Not getting confused at what part is fairy tale and what part is of divine origin from God. And I am most passionate about my relationship with the Creator. And I wanted to explain that. Why? I mean, at first I used to hear people talk about, oh yeah, I love Jesus and stuff. And to me, I thought they were weirdos. Actually, they look like weirdos to me, especially the ones that are, oh, Jesus is my lover. I'm like, you're fucking weird. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that have a one-on-one relationship with the uncreated one. All right. So Native Americans refer to Leali'i or Leatua. Well, that's what Samoans call it. But then you have other cultures like Native Americans that refer to them as him or the creator as the uncreated one. And I really like that when you think about it. If there is a being that is the uncreated one that created all of this. And again, the purpose of this channel was to share some of the things that I have learned across. And this is the reason why I'm bringing this up. The reason I read or study the Aramaic Targum today, oops, sorry about that, is that it was written 200 years after the fact, after the 10 tribes. The 10 tribes to the north were taken into captivity. When they were taken, there, I think it was Daniel. Yep, it was Daniel, Amos, Jeremiah, I believe, and Baruch. Just to name a few of the major and minor prophets during that time period. I think sometimes as a Christian, we read those stories of what happened with those 10 tribes, and we don't really realize the devastation, the trauma. They never made it home. Those 10 tribes never made it home. And the reason they were removed by God, actually. He sent them. He sent the Chaldeans, I believe they were known as. No, Chaldeans were the Babylonians. He sent the Syrians. And they were the ones that took the northern tribes, which made up 10 tribes. There were 12 sons that came from Jacob. Jacob's original name, Jacob, twin brother to Esau. Jacob, after he wrestled with, I believe, one of the angels from heaven. Actually, he did. But some people ask, which angel? Was it Gabriel? Was it Raphael? Anyway, but I really love that story and the meaning as well that goes into Jacob's ladder. But anyway, after that time period, Jacob and Sarai, their names, no, that's Abraham, sorry. Oh, we gotta go. So if we start all over, according to this book, right, 66 books of canonized Bible, again, it was translated into English during 1611. Prior to that, or and even from there, it was a culmination of different languages, right? Because during that 1611 time period, they were speaking English in England, obviously, and then the manuscripts that needed translation were in Latin, so that was in the Vulgate, and then you also had the Septuagint, which is Greek, and then you had the Aramaic Targum, which is it's not Aramaic. Well, I'll come back to that. Is it Aramaic? Yeah, it is Aramaic, or known today as Palestinian. The Palestinian Targum is what I study today. And I've been studying it for the past 20, not 20, since 2020, once I came across that translation. And here's why. The Targum, the translation, or the Palestinian Targum, is, or the Aramaic Targum, correctly, I think that that would be the correct terminology. Targum just means translation. So when you read the King James, it's the King James Targum. If you read it in the New King James or NIV, any other version, the Derby, I think, is one of them. I don't know what the hell that is. Anyway, something I couldn't understand is why would the English translation translate directly from these European translations? I'd rather go directly to the source, like from the original Hebrew to the original Aramaic. So I bring that up to say why. So I wanted to talk about spiritual warfare, and there's two types of praying. It's actually in the Bible that way. It's even broken out. Jesus breaks it out. He gives us a template, the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer is a template because the disciples, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about and who's Jesus, he had 12 followers, 12 inner circle people that followed him. These people, 12 men. And then there was Mary Magdalene, but we could come back to her later. So 12 people made up the inner circle of Jesus. Jesus, to some, was considered a great teacher. To others, he was a great rabbi. Others, he was the Son of God. And to me, I absolutely know to my core that is who he is. That he is who he said he was, is. Um, and if you'd like to come with me along this journey of finding and discovering and coming to the conclusion of there is no other God and there is no other way. And this is what this channel is about. I'm not here to be subjective or, well, I might be subjective in some of the things that I share with you that have been my reasons why I believe what I believe. Um, I am analytical by trade, by design, and I do that for a living. I crunch numbers, I crunch data, I look at details on a global scale, and I figure it out what's going to happen and give a forecast to the people that I work for and let them know this is coming down the pipeline. Whether they do something with that information or not, whether they pivot accordingly, I usually give them markers and things to look for. Like, for example, here's what would happen if you don't. Here's what it would, here are the financial implications, good or bad, to the company. If you pivot this way or if you don't. So I have been brought on to a recent company, not just this company, but it's been a good decade, if not longer, of giving consulting advice on a global scale on how to do international supply chain and logistics. That's my forte. I've been doing it for 35, going on 38 years actually. So that makes me an expert 2 times over. I take that same analytical mindset uh, into my belief system. If it doesn't line up for things like that are reasonable and logical, then it goes into a whole other category of let's look at this. Is there another part of humanity that I am not getting? Right? So some people believe that we are all flesh and blood and that's all there is to it. Right? That we are just sense based, 5 senses. We're born, we live, we die. That's the end of existence. I don't believe in that. And I don't believe in that because there are certain books that I looked into that explains the story. It makes so much sense. Everything else sounds like a gimmick, not real. Um, and I like to share that with you guys, right? So if you're interested in going on this journey, it starts out with knowing how to pray. Let's go there. So Jesus, he teaches his disciples how to pray. It's a template. The Lord's Prayer is not something you recite over and over verbatim. He said it. This is the way you pray. This is the way. A template starts out with Our Father who art in heaven, which is all old English. This is in Edwardian time period language. So Queen Elizabeth, right? During the time of Queen Elizabeth and her cousin, crazy ass Queen fucking Bloody Mary of the Scots, right? That's the time period when this Bible that we're all accustomed to here in the West of reading. The book that, or King James Bible, which was published in 1611. Again, this is during the Edwardian time period, right before um, West Europe was coming out of the Dark Ages. That's another thing, that whole Dark Ages period. I think it was like 350 years during the Spanish Inquisition, which really was low key. This was a genocide based on belief system. So, what they were really, who they were really killing during the Spanish Inquisition was anyone that studied that followed the Mosaic Law, that followed the prescription of the feast days, that followed what is in the Word. And I believe it took about 350 years before that time period ended. And that rolls right into the Renaissance. So to wrap this up really quickly, you have the 12 tribes that came from one man, but they were the grandsons of Abraham. Those 12 tribes, 10 of them were taken away into Assyria, never to return until the last days. In the end times, those 10 tribes are revealed. They have been scattered throughout the whole world. Now, some people would refer to them as Jews. That's not who the 10 tribes are. Jews are of the tribe of, they're referring to one of the 12 tribes, and that is the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin were from the southern tribes. Now, those southern tribes are also referred to as Judah. And when you look at the 10 from the north and the 2 from the bottom, in totality, when you refer to them as a whole, they are known as Israel. But when you are referring to the 10 tribes in the north, just the 10 tribes, they are also referred to as Israel. And the 2 on the bottom are referred to as Judah, aka Jewish people, right? Referred to as the Jews. That's only one tribe. Again, they are not all white. Shocking. I actually believe some of them are Chinese. If you read or study the 12 tribes, the 12 patriarchs, they all left their own testimonies that they left with their children. Of course they would. Some people say, why would you believe those writings? Are you kidding? These people documented everything. And after what happened to Joseph, of those 12 brothers, and how they ended up in Egypt, and the remorse after 30 years of their sin, that they had, lied to their father, that their brother had been eaten by a wild animal, and all that time of Noah of the father, just so longing after his son, not knowing. But there are other books that are in antiquity that I've came across, like Legends of the Jews. Now, this was put together by Ginsburg, Rabbi Ginsburg. If you look into credibility of different rabbis with translations, you'll find out that's probably the most well-documented, close to the Midrash. If you study the Midrash, those are also writings, Jewish writings of events, tales, further details into the stories, all the way from Adam and Eve in the garden. Once you have all the stories put together, I tell you, that book comes alive, and the power that comes from prayer. There's 2 types of prayer. You have the prayer of the template that Jesus gave to his disciples. Then you have the other prayer when the disciples couldn't cast out a demon out of a little boy. Interesting, right? Little boy has a demon. In fact, if you look in the Bible, there's a lot of demonic oppression. The first thing Jesus does right after he is this is at the beginning of his ministry, right? He goes up to John the Baptist, gets baptized in the Jordan, goes down, comes up, and then when the sky opens up, check it out. The dove comes out, and a voice from heaven comes basically and tells everybody, this is my beloved son. Follow him, or do what he says. And then from that point out, Jesus is taken into the wilderness, 40 days, 40 nights. Interesting, that number, 40 days, 40 nights, he fasts. After the 40 days and nights, here comes the temptation. Three different temptations: power, money, fame. And then the third one is, oh no, and the first one starts out with physical needs, right? He asks the tempter, the devil, right? He comes up, and it's funny. Devil always shows up when you're really tired, when you're physically tired. But if you're not prayed up, you won't be able to withstand him. This is something that's really key when it comes to spiritual warfare. When you find yourself halt, it's an acronym that's used in AA. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, check yourself. Check yourself, right? You might not be operating on on a full deck, not firing right. So anyway, if you want your backup right when it comes to spiritual warfare and God, make sure those things are taken care of, right? Physical. Second thing he tempts him with is um, what is taken out of context when we talk about taking the Lord's name in vain, which is the second. That commandment is also the temptation that the devil actually comes to Jesus with when he says, he takes him up on a high pinnacle and he says, throw yourself off, this cliff. And, it says in the word that he will discharge his angels, dispatch his angels, lest your foot be dashed against a rock. Now, if you study the book of Adam and Eve, which most people in the Christian church are told not to, I've been told my entire life not to as well. Some of these books reveal a lot of truths that are actually in the word. Anyway, it's to fulfill something that was in there as well, where Adam was. Anyway, to tempt the hand of God, basically, guys, to know what that really means is it's to try to attempt suicide and ask God to save you, or being really dramatically desperate, or dramatically, over the top. I don't know if you've ever been dramatically over the top with God. I have been there. Where I'm like, if you don't answer me, I'm gonna go crazy and kill myself, right? That kind of stuff. That's tempting fate. That is tempting the hand of God. Just in case you've heard it wrong in a sermon. I could back it up with some words or verses if you like in the back at the bottom. Sorry, I'm trying to rush because the park rangers said they're going to close it up. And by the way, they give you tickets promptly and lock the gate. Anyway, I got to go. And the last thing, temptation, right? Power. And the third temptation was three-part, which is everything to do with music, power, and fame. I'll talk more about that on the next posting. It'll all be about music. And if you want to pre-study about it, it has to do with megahertz. If you look into frequency, the frequency that is correct for us to understand or open up our pineal gland, because that's our antenna. God created us with the antenna to get to him, right? It's in the pineal gland. Look it up. If that's totally calcified, that part of you, when you worship or sing or pray, is not connected. So if you're ever in prayer and you're wondering, hey, I don't know why it feels like I'm not going anywhere, that might be part of it. And that has to do with food and diet. I'm out.